Welcome to Excel Magic Trick number 1024. Hey, if you want to download this workbook 1024, click on the link below the video. In this video, I want to talk about the SUMIF and SUMIFS functions for adding with one or more criteria. I also want to talk about the table feature to create dynamic ranges. We're going to have formulas up here, but I want to be able to add new records and have my formulas update. We'll also see a problem with table formula nomenclature, and we'll use cell references instead, and we'll learn that those are dynamic also, as long as you have the table feature on. Now, I'm using the file extension .xlsx, and I'm going to use Control-T to convert this to a table. Now, I have field names at the top, records and rows. I'm going to use the table feature because I want to be able to add new records and have our formulas update. Now, you could go to Insert, Table with a single cell selected. I'm going to use the keyboard Control-T. Click OK. Now, it's got drop downs with sorting and filtering, formatting, all sorts of things. But what I like is these are dynamic ranges. Now, let's look at the SUMIF function to add with one criteria and look at the table formula nomenclature that comes with the table feature. And in some situations, it's great. Some situations, it's not. So I'm going to use the SUMIF. Now, SUMIF will add with one condition. The range. Oh, so for right here, I want to add all the amounts from this column for Fido, and then for Fluffy, and then for Gigi. So the range, I need to highlight the whole column. Now, notice it gives me the table name and the field name, which is fine for this formula. You could type out the cell references, and then you'd have to lock them so they're locked as you copy down. But we'll use the table formula nomenclature here. Now, criteria, that's going to be the dog name, and then comma, the sum range. Those are the numbers to add. All right, so far so good. Control-Enter. I'm going to point to that little fill handle in the lower right-hand corner. When it turns to a crosshair or angry rabbit, I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to come to the last cell and hit F2. So perfect. Look at that. The ranges are locked, and the criteria is not relative cell reference. Now, if I come to the last cell in the data set and hit Tab, I can create a new record. Fido 7-23. Watch this. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut because I want the cell above has the content that I want here. Control apostrophe copies whatever's directly above you. Here, if I type an A, because I don't have any other A words, I get autocomplete. I could have used Control apostrophe there too, and then this is 22. Now, before I hit Enter, let's watch for Fido up here, right? I'm going to hit Enter here, not Tab, because I do not want to create a new record. And sure enough, the formula updated the amount. Now, let me show you one problem, because up here we have a different situation. We're going to be adding with two conditions. So for any cell, I need to look at the row header and the column header. So in this cell right here, I need to add all of the amounts from this column that belong to Gigi for accessories. For this cell right here, I need all of the amounts from this column that are for Fido and boarding. So for any intersecting cell, I'm adding with two conditions. Let me just show you. I'm just going to do a sum function and highlight the column right here. This is totally ridiculous, but watch what happens to table formula nomenclature. Notice it's looking at the date column. It happens to be adding because dates are serial number, but I don't care what the result is. Check this out. Oh, it's moving from invoice number. And for this formula here, I need to lock those cell references down. So one way to do it is to skip over the formula nomenclature. Now, you can turn it off in File Options, and some people do that because it's just flat out annoying. But you can also type them out, and so that's what we'll do. Let's look at the SUMIFS with an S. This function can add with one or more conditions. I like this function better than SUMIF, partially because they name the two ranges with names, sum range and criteria range. So there's no mixing those up like there is with SUMIF. Sometimes you look at the range and you're like, what's that? All right, so the sum range. Well, we're going to add these dollar amounts. Again, we can't use that because as I copy this over, if I can't enter it, but it would move. So I'm going to type the, actually it does a strange thing. It comes back to dog. I should show you that. If you have the last one here, and I copy it this way, it comes back to dog. It's totally bizarre. Okay, so I don't want that behavior. So I'm going to ifs. I'm going to type it out. So from E, we'll check this out. I'm going to cheat. See that? I didn't want to type it all. I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it. And then I'm going to change the 8 to a 9. Boop. So now it pops down here. So I didn't have to type all that out right there. All right, so that's the sum range, the criteria range. Well, we have two conditions. So there's one of the conditions. Here's the column. So I'm going to go all the way down there to 18 and hit F4. And then backspace 9. By the way, these will be dynamic. Even though they're 11 to 19, as I add new records, it'll say 20, 30, 40. All right, the criteria. Now, here's where we're going to have to get tricky. Most textbooks and in many situations, people would just keep that a relative and then make food absolute and copy it down, and then go and create a whole new formula for accessories, and then a whole new formula for boarding. But let's talk about mixed cell references. Now, this A2, as I copy the formula down, I need that A2 to move to A3, and then A4, and then A5. So right now, as a relative reference, it would work. But when I copy it over to the D column for accessories and E for boarding, I don't want A2 to move. I need it to be locked on the A. So this is an example of where I need to lock just the letter, but not the row. So with the cursor touching it, as soon as you click on the cell reference, your F4 key becomes a toggle that toggles between the 4 different cell references. Once gives us absolute, then just the row reference locked and not the column. That's a mixed cell reference. And then I hit it again. That's the column locked, but not the row. If I hit it a 4th time, it goes back to relative, back to absolute, row only, and column only. The column is locked, but not the row. That'll work, because when I go this way, it'll be locked on Fido. But when I copy it down, I'll move to Fluffy and Gigi. Mixed cell references. They save time when you're creating the formulas. All right, so criteria range, that's this food category. And I'm going to highlight all the way down to 18, hit the F4 key, backspace 9. All right, so I have the whole column and comma, criteria 2. Well, food. Think about this. When I copy down to the next cell and then down, down, do I want it locked on food, or do I want it to move as a relative cell reference? Well, I want it locked. So guess what? I'm copying it down across the numbers. This form is going down across the rows. So that means the dollar sign has to be in front of the 1. So I'm going to hit F4, F4. Now, when I copy the formula to D for accessories and E for boarding, the C will move to D and then E. That formula right there, a single formula, will work for this whole range. All right, I'm going to Control-Enter, copy it down. Now it's a 2-step process. I copy it down, and then I copy it over. And no way, there is my formula. I come to the very last, diagonally furthest cell away, hit F2, and admire the handiwork. We avoided the table nomenclature with the regular cell references, and we got our row header, May 1, and our column header, boarding, for in E1. Absolutely beautiful. All right, so a little bit about SUMIF using the table nomenclature where it didn't mess us up. And SUMIFS, where we had to switch from table nomenclature to regular cell references. You could actually, if you wanted to turn them off and they just totally annoy you, you could go to Options. And then in Formulas, you can say Use Table Names and Formulas. Turn that off, and that will avoid table formula and nomenclature altogether. Now, actually, we want to check it out, 11 to 19. If I come down here and say Gigi. And this will be 7-24, and the invoice will be 10592. Food, $200. And I'm going to hit enter. Notice, looks like the formulas are all working here, and check that out. That 19 went to 20. So regardless if you use straight cell references like that, if it's a table, it will be dynamic. Alrighty, we'll see you next trick.